Hey guys, hopefully this is the first and only one of these that I'll have to do for you, but you never know. But regardless, hope everything's going good. Hope y'all are staying safe. Hope y'all are washing your hands so that you don't pass this nonsense any further. We're going to be doing chapter 12. And today will be chapter 12, section 1. That's how we'll identify things. You'll have a DA that you'll need to do. And you'll actually have a little bit of a short answer question sheet that you'll need to do and turn in on Classroom as well. Hopefully you checked Classroom. Well, I guess if you didn't check Classroom, you wouldn't be watching this video. So, well, anyhow, 12.1. This 12.1 is going to be talking about the Renaissance. The Renaissance is a time of rebirth, is what it's called. Renaissance means rebirth. Italy had just gone through quite a bit of struggle. We had what do we call it? We had turmoil in the church. We had plague. Italy is drawing closer and closer to becoming an urban society. What do we mean by urban? We mean a city-dwelling society. What do we have here where we live? We are in a rural society. Such a fun word to say. Say it with me. Rural. But anyhow, we live in a rural society. The church had begun to fall, or not fall, I guess I should say, but it began to weaken a bit. And the people of Italy had become more and more secular as time had rolled on. Now, secular is a lot of times used as a in the religious realm or in the church realm, and you'll hear things like, oh, they're so secular, or this country is secular. Well, what it means is worldly, meaning we're no longer following directly in the path of the church and the leadership of the church. We're following in a path of the world. We're making the choices that we want to make. We're not making choices because some higher being told us to. We're making choices because we want to, and this is kind of what the Renaissance is. They had a plague. Plague had killed a third of their population. And it got to a point where they said, you know what? You can be whatever you want to be. They begin to live life for themselves, a higher regard for themselves in their own life. You got a guy by the name of Leonardo da Vinci. Now, Leonardo da Vinci, he was not stuck in one little thing, or he didn't have to be just one thing. He was a scientist, he was a mathematician, he was an inventor, he was an artist. He did whatever he wanted to make himself happy, and the world is better off for it. What they tried to tell people during this Renaissance time period is just because you're a blacksmith during the day doesn't mean you can't go play the guitar in a band at night. And this is true for all of us, right? You don't have to tie yourself to this one thing. Now, the Italian states. You have the Italian states, and in Italy, some of your biggest ones. Obviously, you had Rome, but we're going to bypass it for right now. We're going to talk about Milan, Venice, and Florence. And in Milan, Venice, and Florence, you're going to have a bunch of different guys come along to lead them. And guess what all these guys are? Rich. Yeah, rich. And we've seen this throughout history. The rich rule the world, it seems like. Heck, our president of the United States right now was a billionaire before he was our president. So, anyhow, no different back then in Italy, where the rich were taking care of it. You had Venice. I mean, we've all heard of Venice, or at least I hope we have. And Venice was being ran by a group of wealthy merchant aristocrats. And that's what all these cities were being led by, wealthy merchant aristocrats, guys with landed aristocracy, right? The wealthy. The gap between the rich and the poor in Italy at this particular time, about 85 to 95% of Italy was poor, or the peasants or the people in Italy were poor. So you had this schism, you had this separation that was going to begin to happen. You had a French guy, king, whatever you want to call him, Charles VIII. And Charles VIII is going to move into northern Italy, and he's going to basically take it over. Why is he able to take it over? Because in Italy they don't have any kind of emperor at this particular point in time. They don't have one guy that is leading the whole of Das Boot, right? So he comes into the north, Charles III takes over, He does so by hiring mercenaries, paid soldiers. We've talked about the guy that has enough money can pay his soldiers whatever he wants. So he takes over, and he actually hires some Spaniards to work for him. He hires some Spanish armies to help him take over. And so there's Spaniards there in his army. And guess who shows up? But a Spanish guy. Well, Charles had not been paying, right? Got to see who he was not paying. Hold on. Let me look. I want to know who the guy that beat Charles was. Oh, well, here you go. They're both Charles. That's why I was confused. Charles VIII, French. A Spanish guy by the name of Charles I comes in. Charles I gathers some Spaniards up to him, and they start chanting outside of the city, money, 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 money. And why are they chanting money? Because Charles VIII hadn't been paying them. And Charles I says to all these Spaniards, he says, hey, who would like to sack one of the greatest cities in all of the world? Rome. And what's he do? The next day they come out, sacks Rome. Charles I, the Spaniard, defeats Charles VIII, the Frenchman, and we say it specifically. The invasion of Sac Rome in 1527 was the turning point that caused Charles VIII of France to lose the Italian wars. All right, so now let's talk about some more rich guys, and we're going to talk about this guy by the name of Machiavelli. He was Machiavelli. He wasn't a prince, but he was another rich guy in this aristocracy, and he writes a book called The Prince. And in his Prince, he says he encourages rulers and would-be rulers to believe that human nature was self-centered, that everybody is out for themselves. Now, in a sense, he's not wrong, but in a sense, there are a lot of people out there that were doing things for the betterment of others. And what he is saying is, I will do things for the betterment of myself. You get another one of these guys, Castelline, and Castelline is going to write a book called The Book of Courtier. It was a book written by him, and according to Castelline, a noble should fulfill certain ideas. A noble should perform military exercises. A noble should gain a classical education. The idea of being noble. Why? Because we're better than that other 95%. And they will go so far into Rome as that the rich will look at the poor and say, if you cannot contribute to Italy, then get out. Family life was patriarchal. The marriage contract included a dowry. We've talked about dowries before. A dowry is a sum of money given to the groom by the wife's family. Because now that I'm taking care of the woman, the father of the woman or father of the daughter should pay for her to get married. Well, guess what, guys? Even in today's society, the traditional way of marriage was that when you get married, even today, do you know who pays for the wedding? I mean, the whole ceremony, or who is supposed to pay for it? The bride's parents. This is our form of a dowry right here, because you're not taking that money out of your groom's hand. It is coming from the father of the bride to go ahead, take her. She's all yours. We don't want her anymore. That's going to shut us down today. Just a little bit about Rome, the Renaissance, rebirth, things changing. The biggest change is that we're going to start thinking about ourselves more and not just about survival. We're going to think about fun. We're going to think about art. We're going to think about literature. We're going to do all of these types of things. All right, guys. I hope everything is going well for you. I hope your family is all good. Do all the stuff you're supposed to do. Wash your hands and be safe.